Hello everyone, Master Xeon1001 here, and in this video we'll be going over some custom cutters I've created over the course of the 712 development and various ideas that you may have seen me posting to Twitter or various forms of social media of just different types of cutters that can be done in Boxcutter and ways I've gone about creating them. Some of the most impressive ones are made in some of the easiest ways using a variety of the techniques that have been shown in previous Boxcutter content. So without further ado, I'm Master Xeon1001 and let's go through and mess with some custom cutters. The first cutter I've been experimenting with and I wanted to show you guys was the one that I used in this corridor demo. So I'll just press Shift tilde and go into walk mode, just walk around this thing. Just something I like doing, and just walk around my corridors, wishing that this way went to a science lab and this way went to like a rocket depot, but you know, we'll get back to that. So for this one, you know, it's not gonna look exactly like this, but I just want to show how I made it. So we'll just make a new file and look at this in front view. We'll just draw a red box and from here we'll shift to keep it live so that we can bring in another box, and we'll shift to keep that one live so we have two live boxes going on here. To minimize our work, we'll use the mirror tool in hard ops and just mirror it on the Z. Press Shift H, and I'm trying to do this quickly. I'll hold Shift to get it fine, then press E to extrude this back down, and we'll do another cut here. Press B, T to add some thickness. One of the new things in 712, also I'll want to mirror it this way as well. One of the new things in 712 is if you use thickness, it only goes one way, so that way it doesn't mess with your normals. Just one of those really small things that was bugging me that I'm glad we finally was able to get resolved. So nothing complex here, it's just a series of red cuts. You know, I wasn't joking in my earlier box cutter videos where I said really all I need is red box to make it in life, but everyone also needed Ngon. So let's use a little Ngon action. I'll look at this from this side. And we'll bring this down 30 degrees, bring it up here, double click, bring it in here. We'll press T, adjust the thickness. So we have something like that. So this is now my corridor. In order to make this a cutter, what I would do is at this point insert a cube. We'll just scale it up just a little bit, and we'll go in edit mode, press 3, and just bring in some of these faces like so, and then we'll mirror it. And so we'll take this, cut it in here, giving us this shape. However, we want to S-sharp it so that way the shading looks correct, and everything's looking good here. In fact, I can take this, click this button, which will apply the cutters and make this a real object, and just scale it down. So I'll apply the scale, and if I go to custom cutter, I can press C, and that will make this the cutter, and that should at least make up for the issues where if you undo, you lose your cutter. I'm going to turn on snapping for face, and we'll just draw it right here. We'll just pull this out, see what we get. RX90, Control A, apply to rotation. And voila, now we have made a corridor cutter. So that was the point of this particular demo. So now on to the next crazy cutter. So the next demo was this little apartment test. You know, this was just something I did real fast, testing out Boxcutter. So, you know, just let's actually, you know, I've been using Control A and using visual geometry to mesh as the new apply all. It's pretty awesome. So doing this thing, I'm pretty sure I inserted a cube, and SZ2 SX 1.5, and from here just probably used make boxes in order to create the shape, not that sort of make box. In fact, I could start from the center and hold Alt in order to draw a proportional, well-mirrored box. So there's our base, and then I'll use HardOps Q array in order to just pull this up. I'm no building modeler, but you know, this was just how I did my particular test for this. So from here, I'll insert another cube, and that'll be the building. And in fact, I'll mirror it across the base object instead of mirroring it across itself, just to make sure nothing funny happens with it. And then I just use Boxcutter to cut some insets like you see here. But all in all, I would say I had a little bit of fun making this. It really got me thinking about doing some sort of architectural assets that would be able to be inserted like the demo that I'd shown on Twitter. However, it also showed me that we need some sort of smart stacking system, which, you know, the solution that we came up with internally was, you know, maybe we should do a collection cutter where you can use an entire collection as a cutter. But really, once you start talking like that, it starts getting to a KitOps level. In fact, I'm pretty sure I also tried to use custom shape here. In fact, I have to apply to scale. And let's just try it. We'll press A to make it a make box and bring it up. And that's just too slow to have to work, really. So we'll use array, put one here and at the bottom. And we should also mirror this across itself and duplicate this over. And it's inside, so, you know, we'll just let that go. We'll duplicate it R90 in top view. I'm also showing my keystroke, so I'm hoping that that helps. You know, I'm well known for doing the worst tutorials ever. And we'll just mirror that across. And let's see, now we just have to do some sort of roof. And need to switch back to box. And we'll press A to switch to a make box. Bring this up. This is starting to turn into a little bit of a modeling tutorial here, but a little early morning modeling never hurt nobody. We'll just go ahead and make this a make box. So I saw a tip where they were saying that you can use Alt S. In fact, what was it? Alt S 0.9. No, maybe it was these two. Alt S. You know what? We'll skip that. I'll be back with that. But I saw a tip about that. I was like, huh, that's interesting. Right here, I'll just press Q, flatten. And we'll just find the axis that it needs to be flattened on. Sorry, sometimes I'll just kind of zone out in thought and get on a rant. Sorry, try not to rant, trying to keep this professional. So we probably want to bring out the base. And we'll just draw one of these numbers, scale it down. Sometimes the upper origin point comes in handy. However, you know, I should show you all the idea I have for solving the origin of boxes. It's a system in itself, but we're still in the process of sorting it out. With 2.8 changing so much, let's undo that. I want to mirror this across this. Almost lost my object there somehow. And we'll just array it. And so that's our building. In fact, we can delete this one. I just used that one for reference. So with this, I can just Control A, visual transform, which is terrible, I know, and or visual geometry to mesh, sorry, which I know is terrible, and then join it together. And with this as our custom cutter, now I can see how weird things get if scale's unapplied. Sorry, I'm having a stroke here. So if I unapply to scale, this is what it turns into. So we'll press Control A, apply rotation and scale, and now it's been reset. But that's fine because I can select this, press C, and now draw this on the ground. Of course, this isn't a cutter, but doing this gave me the idea that maybe we should come up with some sort of smart stacking system, because obviously scaling buildings like this isn't ideal, but it is a cool idea. I mean, if you made buildings fairly ambiguous and then came back with, say, a window cutter, this could be very cool. But I just wanted to show off this particular idea as well because I had some fun with it. Also, I see that we could probably use a accelerator to really jump this thing up to skyscrapers, but just the idea of being able to bring things up just like this, just Box City right here in a nutshell. I mean, we go down into perspective view. That's Box City, guys, but the scale isn't perfect. So back to the drawing board with that one. So on to the next crazy cutter. The missile cutter was another popular cutter. So just showing that one, of course, the first step is to model a missile. So I did, of course, mirror model it with Subdivision in mind. And then, of course, put a mirror going all the way around it. I'm a big fan of using empties for mirroring. So you can see as I move the empty, it's generating the mesh around it. So it's mirrored two ways. And this is a common way for me to work. I'm just checking the scale. So to show this one in action, if we were to just take this and, you know, hate doing it, but visual geometry to mesh, we move this over and we'll just scale this cube around it. Previously, I was using union booleans in order to set this up, which is actually kind of crazy. We'll apply to scale, we'll select this, and press Control J to join them. And that's it. That's the cutter. So now the missile is a cutter. So we'll just scale this cube up. We'll go into Boxcutter, custom shape, select this, press C, and by just stretching this out and pulling it down, it replaces the cube with this subdivision friendly version of the missile. It's just really insane. You know, you mess around with booleans long enough and booleans start to mess with you, but I found this one to be really fun to mess with. In fact, you can make missiles of all sorts of stock, and as I messed with it, I was like, you know, I could use this on that spaceship idea of just being able to just turn cubes into missiles. So I just wanted to show that one in action. I'm not going to go through and make the whole cube. Now when it came to making the GIF that I ended up showing of this, all I did was just cut the cube down destructively, and it already had a smoke sim set up where it would just launch at the end like you see doing here. So just goofing off and having fun with booleans, but it's kind of interesting to see that you're able to cut a completely subdivision friendly rocket out of a mesh with booleans, which this is something we've known for a while about the ability to force geometry onto other geometry, but to force the geometry to completely overtake it is a whole nother concept that I hope to play with more in the future. But on to the next cut. The next cutter was the Blender mouse, which this mouse was made using Boxcutter and a little bit of Subdivision. In fact, if I go through the modifier scroll, you can see all the cuts that were made. And so with this, I can go under custom shape, press C, make it a custom cutter, and we'll just insert a plane and use 2D bevel in order to make it round like a mouse pad. We'll bring this down, and that is our plane, and we'll make sure that we're in gray. We don't want to make this a cutter. And you can see that now I'm able to just draw this sub-D mouse out. However, in the example, everything was actually merged together. So let's do that. So we'll go in here, let's look at our subdivision, which is at level 2. We'll lower it by a level and just press Control A, visual geometry to mesh. We'll hide the cable, we don't need it. We'll select this, Control J, join everything, make that the custom cutter, and now I'm able to just draw this mouse out. So this has shown me that we do need some sort of a constrained draw system that ensures that the shape that you're drawing is at the exact proportions of the initial shape, but was still a fun test of just messing with the custom cutter. I did want to go back and do a hard ops box cutter video talking about using subdivision surfaces at some point in the future and just how I approached them, because they're not completely out of the question. However, their placement in the stack is essential. Another thing is, you may notice that I keep having to apply the geometry to the mesh in some of these cases. This is something that we hope to add in the future in the form of non-destructive cutters, where the cutters are able to be linked and non-destructively edited. However, this one was a fun one, and I just wanted to just show that one real quick. All right, don't tell anybody, but we're going to press X and delete that cube, and Shift 8, insert a plane, Alt G to reset its location. Press SX2. Look at this from the front view. And from here, I'm just going to add a couple of loop cuts, 3. Add 1 loop cut, and from here I could just press Control 1, 2, 3 in order to add 3 levels of subdivision. However, I'm also going to select everything and use Shift tilde, which I have mapped to select boundary loop, and we're just going to mark those as sharp, because in my sharp options also mark crease and seam. In fact, I mark everything, so now it's creased up nicely. We can go from here, go to our modifier stack, add a displace modifier, and change the modifier to use a clouds texture. And as we add more subdivisions, we should be able to get this going the way that we want. I'll even increase the strength and apply scale just to make sure we're not messing anything up here. And if we split the view, a moment ago this crashed. We'll change this into a shader editor and go to Object, and there's no shader here, so we'll just remove the shaders that are in here, and we'll bring in a wireframe and emission, and we'll also bring in a transparent, and we'll also bring in a mix shader. So a lot of nodes here, not really, you know, nothing complex. Watch people in the comments complain about this node setup. We'll also check pixel size. That way it's the same size as we get away from it. Select it. All right. And if we jump it over to Eevee, this is what we have so far. And if we unplug emission, this is what we have. Let's see, maybe we have it in backwards, and we do. So this is what we want. However, we also want the shader to show transparency. So we'll turn on additive and just increase the size. And there we've created the ground. And this is just something I've been doing over and over, kind of experimenting with. We'll just bring another plane in here. And for this plane, we're just going to put 2 loop cuts and then Control B, bevel it. In fact, you could see that there's probably a better way to have done that. We'll select everything, press I, delete the faces, leaving us with just this edge parameter. And we'll select these 4 edges and Control B, bevel. And for this one, we'll give it another material. This time it'll just be straight emission. We'll set this to 8. There's stuff always in the way when I'm doing these videos. All right. And in fact, for this one, we can Alt X mirrored across and Alt X mirrored across again. That way we only have to modify one side in order to lower the size of these little ticks. So this is what we have so far. So the next thing is to create some grid walls. at that reflection on the white plane. Looks great. So we'll take this material. So I'll select both of them, Control L. They'll share materials, and we will just subdivide till we get something like that. However, I don't like the edge going down the middle. So to make it easier for us, I'm going to delete that. Actually, undo. Here's where crashing becomes a thing. We want to make this its own material and then do all that crazy stuff. And so for this one, the easiest way to convert it to a wireframe would be to just put a wireframe modifier on it. So we get something like that. In fact, we can maybe even lower it a little bit more so it's some really thin wireframes. And we'll take this, duplicate it, R90, place it here. This next part, I'm sure there will be someone in the comments saying, hey, why didn't you use dupliverts? I don't trust them. Not my geometry. I don't trust them. So in this case, we're going to just use a icosphere, and we're just going to assign it the material from the other one using the Alt-M. And you know what? Let's try dupliverts. So we'll do Control P, keep transform, and if we, now that these objects are parented, it should be right here. Trying to select the instance here. And see, this is why you don't see me messing with dupliverts. So we'll Alt P unparent this one, so that way we can parent it here. And we'll change this one to be dupliverts too. And find our little clone, which always becomes harder to see. Got you. That one's that one, so if I press H and hide it, sheesh, really give me the work, and it's right there. Alt G, and we will just place this where we need it. GX. GY, and we just want these to be sitting on a dot here, and we can even press H to hide that. So now we have our object set up here along with our grid. In fact, we can Alt SZ, scale it up a little bit. Nah, it looks a little bad. Let's just stick with the basic plan. However, I will scale it out on the Y just to get exactly where I want. So now we'll select all of this and Control A, visual geometry to mesh, Control J, let's see, make duplicate, which one? This one? And then we'll Control A, geometry to mesh, and then join it. So now everything's together. So with this, if we go in the, let's collapse that. We turn on bloom. We have our grid. And if we start Boxcutter and make this our custom shape, that the custom cutter, and we will just draw our HUD. And as you can see, this would be really cool to just put on some sort of sci-fi deck on that pre-mentioned spaceship idea. But I just wanted to show you guys how this idea was put together, however, minus the duplicate faces. I think I actually used arrays, but still cool nonetheless. So on to the next custom cut. In this example, I wanted to show a custom dynoplate pipe cutter, another idea that we've been working on. So if I draw this one, you can see that this cuts in plating and pipes at the same time, which got us on a very interesting train of thought of Maybe some sort of procedural cutter would be the next level for Boxcutter. So just to show how this was made, I'm just going to insert a plane after deleting everything, and we'll put 4 loop cuts in here, and just look at this from top view and use our old classic buddy, the knife tool. Press E to end a cut and begin the next cut. And from here, do another one. And we're just cutting some of my favorite types of angles in here, just to create some random plating. And so with all these here, I can press Control B, bevel them, and delete the faces that are newly created. However, I may want to undo one step and just make that a little bit thinner. Shift A. The next thing from here is to insert a empty of a sphere. However, right now our snapping is set to increment, so if I press G and I hold Control, I can actually snap the plane exactly to where I need it in this corner. And by selecting both of them and using Alt X, I can mirror them across each other. And selecting them again and using Alt X, I can mirror them across each other again, giving me something like this. And to top it off, I can even move the empty over just a little bit more in order to put a gap there. And if I'm really the sporting type, I can move it down and also put a gap here. However, for this, I may want to go in edit mode and just bring some of these occasional faces down. And here we are with our custom plate. In fact, the next thing from here is to press Q and add a little bit of thickness. And then the next thing would be to Shift A, add another cube. In fact, we want to put this cube right in the center of it all. So the easiest way to do that would be to Shift S, select the empty, put our cursor there, Shift S, selection of cursor, and we'll just scale this cube down, S, Z, and we'll select both of them, and we'll use difference. However, we don't actually want difference. What we actually want is intersect. So let's collapse these, locate our boolean, and make sure that we have intersect. And if we S sharpen this, the shading will look fine. And we can also take edges and bevel it and do what we need to in order to create our custom shape here. However, for finishing this, what we want to do is Shift A, add a cylinder, and we'll press S, Y, to S, Shift Y in order to scale on everything but Y in order to bring this in. And this will be our first pipe. And we'll Control R, add a loop cut, E, Alt S in order to push this in. And we can Control R, roll a couple of loop cuts in here, Shift B to bevel those loop cuts, E, cancel, Alt S in order to push this out. And then we'll press Shift H in order to show everything but that area of geometry. And we'll just do a box select and select all of this in the middle because we already have see-through on. E, Z, S, Z. And we could even take this after the fact and use operations clean mesh in order to just clean it up to its simplest form. And then once we mirror it across itself, it should look fairly decent, except for this one in the middle. I could use a little bit more cleaning up, and we mirror it across again. And things are looking good here. So if we take this and put an array on it, click plus a couple of times, and we'll just drag this back to the beginning, and we'll just use the helper in order to just quickly add on to this. So now it's more, how are we going to get this all to combine the way we need it to? So I'm going to Shift D, duplicate this, and we're going to put a displace on it as a modifier, which displace in a situation like this will make it where it pushes it out evenly on all sides. So it's like a normal push in this case. So we will take that, take our new shape, and control numpad minus to cut into it. So now that's a cutout, and we take this, select our outside shape, control plus to union them both together, and now we have our custom cutter created. So if I shift A, add a cube, and we select this, we press C, mark it as custom. I'll use face snapping in order to draw this shape. However, right now we only have a bunch of piping. For some reason we do not have all of our plating. So that could be a matter of us just needing to scale this out in order to get it to read. So let's try it again. And it still doesn't work. So let's try something else a little more drastic. And that is Shift D, duplicate, Control A, visual geometry to mesh. We'll move that over. We'll take this piece, Shift D, Control A, visual geometry to mesh. Let's see, we'll take this one, snap the cursor to selected, and then we'll snap this one, selection to cursor. It's going to give us the work today, isn't it? So let's just bring these down. Control plus, join them together. In fact, we probably need not union, but difference. So now if I mark this as my custom cutter with C, and I draw this one out, you see that now we've cut in both our pipes and our plating. However, we want a little more than that, so I'm going to Control Z, undo, and we'll go back to our initial cutter itself and go in local mode. And the interesting thing is that we're able to remove various pieces, and this will add to the final result by revealing pipe underneath. And this was based off of a demo, so it has shown me based off of some stuff going on in Houdini that looked real interesting. But really got us thinking about the idea of custom procedural cutters. So I know that this one is a little bit complicated in example, but you know, these are all experimental cutters that I'm showing here that are just ideas that we're messing with as far as directions to go with taking the whole custom cutter thing. But being able to cut both plating and pipes is just something that I hope that you, the users, try out for yourselves. But with that, we'll move on to the next one. For this example, what I'll do is shift right click, place my cursor there, and we'll create a text object and replace the text with Boxcutter. And then we'll go and load up the font for this. I have a font that I like for drawing this. And from here, what I'll do is press Control A, visual geometry to mesh. And if we look at this, we can see that it looks a little trashy. If we use clean mesh on it, it now looks good. So from here, I'll use T-thick to push it both ways. And from here, we can jump into custom cutter, press C to make this the cutter. And now we can cut box cutter text in this object. In fact, if we make it like this, we can press tilde in order to bring it down. But once there was a tool that said hi to us and our response, Boxcutter. In fact, I was looking at an architectural environment where they use something like this to do all the wall cutouts in order to create an interesting wall. So this idea comes back around full circle. I may have to try it out later. So with that, on to the next cutter. Another cutter worth experimenting with is the idea of a custom grid cutter. For example, we can take a circle here and we'll just scale it in And from here, we'll just put an array on it. And we will make that 2, and then copy it, set this to 0, paste in 2, and if we make this the custom cutter, we can now draw out grid arrays. And there's a lot you can do with just this. For example, RZ45. We can even try something like visual geometry to mesh. And we'll just select all of this, Control L, delete verts, reset it. We'll press C in order to make it back the custom shape, and we'll just draw here. And that's just another idea. Over the course of the creation of Custom Cutter, there was one shape that Proxy pointed out to me that I just can't get enough of, and that is the wedge. So I'm just going to draw a box, but I'm going to hold Shift in order to keep it live. And we're going to select this frontmost edge and just dissolve it, and that's our wedge. So if we go under Custom Cutter and we make this our cutter, we can just draw this wedge down and press tilde to rotate it. It was just a real interesting Boolean that I found fun to play with, and can result in some really interesting compound shapes. So I hope that you try experimenting with it as well, because something as ordinary as just a simple wedge can result in some really interesting shapes being created. I'm just goofing off here, and I'm already getting somewhere I just haven't been able to get to previously with boxes alone. So wedges are my new favorite type of box. Alright, in closing, I hope that this video provided some ideas with custom cutters that users would be able to try. We do have a lot of ideas as far as improvements, because with every tool that's created, our work is always just getting started as far as enhancing it and getting to the level of perfection that users are accustomed to. But this is a fine start in that direction, I believe, and it'll only improve from here. Even at this time, while 2.8 is changing so sporadically that it's destabilizing us, we do have high hopes for the future of what this particular tool will be, because it is just another one of the types of cutters that can be used now. But our hopes of expanding it in the future to something even greater is something that we talk about quite a bit. In fact, the version now, I consider it a prelude of what is to come. But I hope that users were able to find more than enough ideas on ways to get started with Boxcutter 7.12 and creating custom cutters. And with that, I'll see you guys next time.